Hey everyone, welcome back to Home Economics. I'm your instructor, Erica. And for today's class, we're going to do something a little bit different. So, one thing that I really love is a fine dining experience. I love the ambiance, I love how the food's a little bit more elevated, and most of all, I love how beautifully the dishes are plated. So, today I'm going to do a couple of different recipes, roughly maybe 4 to 5. And we're going to do kind of a home fine dining experience for my husband and a couple of my friends who are going to come over. So I'm super excited to kind of dive into a couple of recipes that I've done before, but also a few others that are new for me. So we're going to have a nice little appetizer, our main course, and our dessert. I think, is there something else? I think that's it. But we're going to have some fun today. I'm probably going to be in the kitchen for quite a few hours. So come along with me. Obviously, this video is not going to be a couple hours long, but join me on this journey as I kind of learn how to elevate some dishes and learn how to do those fine dining plating techniques. So as always, put your aprons on and let's get started. To begin, we're going to start with 1 3/4 cup of warm water. By the way, I didn't tell you what we're making first. We're going to do some focaccia bread, and then I'm going to do a nice dipping oil to go with it to kind of, get our palates ready for the main course. So then we're going to add in some honey, and I got this from a local beekeeper. He's at one of the farmers markets that I like going to. I call him my honey man. So we're just going to add some of that in. And then also too, you're supposed to use instant yeast. I thought I had instant yeast packets, but I don't. So we're going to use some of this active yeast. I'm going to add a little bit more in than I normally would because this yeast often does not work for me as well as other yeast do, or as well as instant yeast does. So I'm going to take that and whisk it together. Now we're going to add a touch of olive oil, and then we need to do 4 cups of bread flour. Now, once again, I did not check my cabinets before going to the store, and I didn't realize that I only had about maybe 2 cups of bread flour. So this is a little bit of mixture of bread flour and all purpose. And so hopefully we won't have any issues with that. And as I've been babbling, I can't remember how many cups I've just put in. I want to say that's 4. Let's find out. So we're going to stir all this together. I think that was 4. We should be okay because this is about what it should look like. So we're going to whisk, and then once we get it to a certain wow, that just broke. Love that for me. We're going to make it work. Once we get it to a certain consistency, we're going to let this rise for about 15 minutes or so. So while our focaccia bread is rising, which you'll see as I go through the recipe for it, that it requires a lot of steps. So we'll be working with her probably for most of the video. But we're going to move on to our next thing, which is actually going to be dessert. So we're going to do a strawberry shortcake with a little bit of chocolate ganache added to it. So we're going to go ahead and start prepping the strawberries as well as the shortcake. So let's move on to that. For our strawberry shortcake, we're going to start with 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 1 full cup of sugar, which I think might be a little excessive, and about a teaspoon of salt. And we're going to whisk all of that together like so. So we're going to move over to our stand mixer and add those dry ingredients to this bowl over here. I probably could have saved some dishes and just did it all in here, but it is what it is. So now we're going to go ahead and add our wet ingredients. So we have 1 cup of whole milk. We have 2 room temperature eggs, some vanilla extract, whatever. We're going to use the whole thing. And then we're going to need 1.5 cups of softened butter. My butter was frozen and I kind of forgot about it, so I had to melt some of it down. Didn't mean to quite melt it like this, but it's fine, hopefully. So we're going to add in those 3 sticks of softened butter and then let it mix. So, fun fact about this stand mixer that I have, when my dad first retired, he was spending a lot of time with the Home Shopping Network, and he bought a few items that ended up kind of sitting in the basement. So, one day I was in need of a bigger mixer, so I had the opportunity to borrow this one. I think he's unofficially given it to me, but I always told him, if you want it back, it's yours. But I'm very grateful to put this thing to use very often. So we're gonna let this mix for a little bit. Now that everything is all mixed up, we're gonna go ahead and put this into our baking pan. You know, speaking of the Home Shopping Network, I think older folks were, I didn't see the appeal of the Home Shopping Network for real, for real. And then the TikTok shop came along, and I know I am not the only person that's been victimized by the TikTok shop. I don't buy things on there often, but it's gotten me a few times. So I get the appeal of the Home Shopping Network. And that is my oven notifying me that we got to do more stretch and folds for the focaccia. So I'm going to spread this out and then put this to the side because we're actually going to bake some sweet potatoes while we're baking this cake or shortcake. All right, shut up. It's been 15 minutes now, so we need to take our dough for the focaccia, wet our hand, and we got to do some stretch and folds. So basically, it's just taking the dough, stretching with your hands, but making sure that you wet your hands because the dough will stick. Take it like so, wet hand. And we're going to do this about 8 times, and then we'll cover it back up and let it proof for another 15 minutes. So if you haven't read the caption for the video, you may be wondering what the heck are we actually making for our main entree. And hey, we are doing a short rib, wine-braised short ribs over mashed sweet potatoes with Brussels sprouts with a little bacon in it. So we need to go ahead and roast our sweet potatoes. I like to roast them because I feel like they caramelize a little bit better when they're in the oven versus like boiling them. So we're going to go ahead and pop these in the oven. I'm going to cook everything on 350 for right now. Once the shortcake is done, I'm going to crank it up and then get these sweet potatoes cooking a little bit faster. So now we're back to our focaccia and we got to do more stretch and folds. And this time, once we're done with this set of stretch and folds, we're going to let this proof in the bowl for about an hour and a half. So we won't see her for a little while. We're going to put her down for a nice little nap and then return and put her in the pan where we got to let it proof even longer. So enough of that. So now we need to go ahead and prepare our strawberries. And so for some of these, I'm going to leave them just halved because they're going to be used more so as a garnish for our dessert. And then some of them are going to be turned into a strawberry sauce. And then the last of them are going to be macerated together just to add some additional sweetness and kind of also like a garnish for the dish, but just a little bit different. You'll see the vision once I get everything plated. So for these strawberries, to macerate really just means to soak them in sugar and just kind of let them sit and soak up the sugar. And then it's also going to create a nice little juice for them. So I'm just going to add about 3 tablespoons of sugar and give it a good stir. And then I'm going to cover this and then pop it in the fridge roughly until it's time for us to start plating. Now for our strawberries that we're going to turn into a sauce, I can get my stove to ignite. We're going to turn this on medium heat and throw in those 2 cups of strawberries and then also just some sugar. We're going to let that cook down together and it's going to turn really syrupy. And then we'll add a little bit of cornstarch later to thicken it up. Now, if I really had all the ingredients that I needed, I would add a few sheets of plain gelatin, and then that would really kind of make it like a jelly kind of sauce. But we don't have that, so we're gonna make do. Also need to add a little bit of water to this as well. I got in the zone and forgot to turn the camera back on. But essentially, I've let all of those strawberries cook down, and then I blended them up, and that is my cake. I blended them up, and I added some cornstarch to it, so now it's thickening up perfectly how I wanted it to. So I'm gonna take this off the heat and let it cool, and set this to the side. So the shortcake is done. The strawberries are all prepared. Sweet potatoes are in the oven. So now we need to get started on these short ribs. Now I'm going to generously coat these with salt and pepper. And I got these from a local farmer's market. So these came from like an actual rancher or whatever. So they look a little different than what I'm used to. And they're also not as thick as I'm accustomed to. But, you know, support local farmers and, you know, whatever. But I did have to like manually break these down, which I'm not used to that. So this was a kind of a new experience for me. I just realized I did not add a lick of pepper to these. So we're gonna coat these with salt and pepper on both sides so that we can sear them in our Dutch oven, which I have that warming on the stove right now with some olive oil. Right, let's start searing. One thing I'll say is, oh Lord, I dropped it. Short ribs are my favorite protein. I don't know, just something about them. I just think they're just tender and flavorful. So anytime I see short ribs on the menu, I'm ordering them. Our short ribs are now seared, and we do that just to kind of lock in the flavor and the juices. So we're going to put those in a bowl and set them aside. We're going to next take a little bit more olive oil and put that into our Dutch oven. And now I have some mirepoix, which is onions, celery, and carrots. And we're going to cook these down until they start to sweat a little bit. So it can kind of take a little bit because carrots are thick. So we're going to stir these up and let them cook for a little bit. All right, veggies have started to sweat. So now we're going to add some minced garlic. And stir that around as well. I'm going to let that cook for maybe another 30 seconds. And then we're going to add in some tomato paste. Just measure with your heart. That should be enough. Stir that around as well. We're going to take our red wine and we're going to add in about half the bottle or so. And you can use any dry red wine of your choice. It doesn't have to be an expensive bottle. Stir that in. Now we'll add our short ribs back to the pot. Just going to dump those in. And I want to situate these where they can all be, for the most part, submerged as much as possible. I have 2 cups here of beef broth. This may not be quite enough. I'm going to get a little bit more because we want our short ribs to be completely submerged. That way we get that even cook on them. And braising just means submerging in a liquid and cooking. So I got a phone call and I didn't realize the camera cut off. So I'm just going to go back to where I think I left off. But essentially, I covered the rest of the short ribs in additional beef broth, the red wine, and then I added thyme and rosemary to the pot as well as a few bay leaves. And we're going to cook this on about 300 to 350 for about 3 hours or so. And then once they're done, they should be falling off the bone tender. So we're going to pop that in the oven. And we need to go back to our focaccia bread because she's needy and we need to take care of her. So Going back to the focaccia bread, here it is. She's risen. She's looking good. I need to wet my hand because now I've dough stuck to it. But I have this pan that I have lined with parchment paper as well as olive oil. And I'm going to go ahead and put our dough into the pan. I probably could have used a smaller one, but this is the first one I grabbed. And just going to try to scrape this bowl down a bit. And we're going to attempt to spread this out just a little bit. So we're going to let this rise and brew for another probably hour or longer because my short ribs have to cook on a different temperature than this. So maybe a little bit longer. But we're going to spread it out and it's going to rise some, and then we'll dimple it, add more olive oil, and eventually bake it. Sweet potatoes are done baking, so now I'm just going to blend them up. My hope is that they're going to have a little bit of sweetness, so I'm probably not going to add a lot of sugar, if any at all. My goal is that that if you take a bite of the short ribs, the sweet potatoes, and the Brussels sprouts, that you're going to get like the perfect bite of like sweet, savory, and salty. So I'm trying to achieve like the perfect amount of sweetness in the sweet potatoes, but I don't plan on like candying them, if that makes sense. So I did end up adding about 3 tablespoons or so of sugar and a little bit of vanilla, but it's still, for the most part, just naturally sweet. But I don't know, they tasted like orange, if that makes sense. And so I was like, I don't like that. So I was trying to cut that down a little bit, but now it's perfect. Now we are going to move on to the chocolate ganache. Chocolate ganache is really easy to make because it's literally just 2 ingredients and it's about a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every cup of chocolate, you need about 1 cup of heavy cream that you're gonna heat. And then literally we just stir this over the chocolate chips and it turns into a beautiful ganache. All right, heavy cream is added. I hope this doesn't shatter. I think this is that new Pyrex, so sometimes heat is a little dangerous. All right, we're gonna start with that amount. And stir. If I need to add more chocolate chips, we can, which we might need to. I think I'm gonna go ahead and add the whole bag. And then I have more heavy cream if this is too much. Let's add some more. So I'm doing this in a flat container because there's a scooping technique that I'm going to use for when we're plating the dessert. So I figured this would be a little bit easier to make that happen. I'm going to stir this up and then we'll come back. Ganache is all done. So now we'll take some plastic wrap and just kind of press it over the top. Put this in the fridge. Every time I think I'm close to being done, I realize I'm not. So now we need to, I'm going to experiment a little bit here with this garnish thing. It's called a coral tool. Essentially, it's going to go on top of our dessert as a piece of garnish. And it's basically 1/3 part flour, 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, and then 1/3 cup of water. And you mix it together. You can add food coloring if you'd like, which we are going to do today just so we can go with the theme of our strawberry dessert. So I got our water going. Then add add in a drop of gel food coloring. Let's give it a little mixy mix. So technically this is edible, but I don't know if it's worth eating, but we're making it. I'm gonna mix this until we get out all the clumps. Then you heat a skillet up and then you're supposed to just pour that on. And it's supposed to like fry into something that looks like coral. So the outer edges are doing it. I don't know about this middle, but we'll wait and see. And if this doesn't work, it's not a big deal. Let's flip it over. Okay. I think the next one, I'm going to add some more water to it to see if I can thin it out some to make it look more corally. That one was ugly. Let's try again. Maybe my ratios aren't right, but let me be patient. I just flipped it over. I think we're getting closer to what I want, but I don't know. I'm going to go watch a video and see if I've done something wrong. See, this is how I know I'm tired. I had those ratios all wrong. So it's a 4th cup of water, a 4th cup of vegetable oil, and 1 tablespoon of flour. So yeah, everything was wrong. So let's try again. I need a tablespoon. I'm just going to use a big one. I can't get in my drawer. All right. That's about a tablespoon. Okay. Add in our gel food coloring. Give it a mix. Let's see if this works. Take 2. All right, it's not quite round, but I think I can make that shape work. Oh, that's huge. But that's okay. All right, now this looks like coral. This is what we want. I just don't know when it's done frying. So the first method technically worked the best. So this is what I got. So I will just make do with this. We're now going to move on to our bread oil. So I'm going to take some olive oil, extra virgin, of course. And then we have chopped garlic, parsley, and fresh basil. That in. We'll add some dried oregano. Some red pepper flakes. Pepper. Some salt, a little pinch. And then lastly, we'll take some Parmesan cheese. Whoa. Let me not dip the cheese in the oil. I'm going to grate that on with our microplane. We love cheese. And once that's done, we'll stir it up. Probably need more olive oil because this is, here we go. Add some more olive oil because this is kind of thick. And that's about the last of that bottle. Perfect. And then lastly, we'll add a little drizzle of balsamic glaze over the top, and we'll set that to the side. I figured we need something else to go on the plate with our dessert. So I want to make a meringue. So I have some egg whites, and I add some sugar and then some almond extract just to give it a little bit of a different flavor. And then we're going to take the immersion blender and start whisking. And we're going to whisk this until we get stiff peaks. Well, that took forever, but it's done. I'm going to put this in a piping bag and move on to something else. Finally, we are to the last part, which is plating up our dessert. So I have everything laid out that I need. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to take those macerated strawberries that are so beautiful and juicy. And then let's kind of lay a line of those down. Like so. Then I'll get a paper towel and soak up some of those juices so we keep everything nice and neat. Okay, that didn't quite come out how I wanted, but that's okay. We're learning as we go. Ah. Whatever, set you to the side. Then we'll take our shortcake. I'm gonna kind of mold this a little with my hand to make it look a little bit neater. I'll probably cut a different piece and hopefully that will, I don't know. Oh, goodness. Okay. Ah! Whatever. So my meringue is not as stiff as I need it to be. I wonder if I could make like a, oh, it's coming out the top. It's all over my hand. You guys, this is a lot harder than it looks. I honestly didn't anticipate that. I don't know if I like that. I really don't, honestly. But that's okay, because we're going to try again. This is practice. Okay. I don't like that one. Let's move that to the side and turn it into like a bed for the shortcake. Then pop the shortcake on top, even though it's kind of coming out at the bottom. Take some of those strawberries and we just drizzle them down the side. I see why people go to pastry school, because this is not easy. My ganache is too hard. Wow, what a day. Okay, hold please. Third time's a charm. Alrighty. Let's take some of that strawberry gel and we're gonna do like a nice little swipe. Take a little more. Swipe it down. I'll clean that up on the side in a moment. Okay, we got that. Now, Let's take our strawberry shortcake. If I can get it out the pan. Let's set it here. Okay. Then we take our chocolate ganache. We're gonna, okay, that's too soft. I'm gonna put this back in the fridge and hopefully not forget about it so it can harden up to do what I need it to do. Alrighty, until then, let's create some dots. Go bigger. Then we kind of smooth those out. Alrighty. Now let's take some strawberries. Lay them down. Create some interesting shapes. Oh! Okay, I haven't messed up anything yet. Now on this side, let's add. We're getting to the final stages of this meal. So we're going to go ahead and cook some bacon because this is going to go on our Brussels sprouts. Get this nice and crispy. While our bacon is cooking, we're also going to go ahead and add our olive oil to our focaccia bread and start dimpling that, which just means really just putting your fingers in it. I hope this comes out because this doesn't feel like it normally does when I've made it in the past, but we're gonna be hopeful everything. All right, so now everything is done. We got the short ribs. We have our bread oil or dipping oil, our focaccia bread, and our beautiful dessert. I had to hurry up and finish cooking because my phone was losing battery and whatever. I'm gonna edit all this out. It's done. Okay, great.